and flooded many towns way back in the hills of old Vermont. All the neighbors lent a hand for the loving of the land way back in the hills of old Vermont. Oh, tonight I long to be where the catamount roam free and the rattlesnake can lie out in the sun, near the voices of the loons when the apple blossoms bloom way back in the hills of old Vermont. Thank you, folks. We're going to have a great time today right here on the Great Vermont Barn Dance. And we have most of the band is over here. We could see that Rebecca and Dan, and we need Claire over here. And this is a special group. Now, one of the things that you folks out there in the world, and I do hope that there are people watching from different parts of the world. We send you greetings from Heinsberg, Vermont. We like to use a lot of people who are performers and storytellers and dancers that are right here from our state, right in good old Vermont. And we have a special treat because this is the first appearance that I really saw these bands play together in this configuration. I was one time I went, we tried to get to one of their shows, but it was so packed I couldn't even sit down, remember? So we're really great to have Rebecca Padula and Claire and Dan from Leadfoot Louise. And why don't you tell them a little bit about the band and give us a couple of one tune.
All right, thanks. We're Leadfoot Louise. We were just named after one of our members who's a fast driver. So, band name we could all agree on. So, here's a little tune I'll dedicate to my hat. I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande. My legs ain't gold and my cheeks ain't tan. I'm a cowboy who never saw a cow, never roped a steer 'cause I don't know how, and I sure ain't fixing to start it now. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay, yippee-i-oh-ki-yay. I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande. And I come to town just to hear the band. I know all the songs that the cowboys know. Mouth will pick around where the doggies go, 'cause I heard them all on the radio. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay, yippee-i-oh-ki-yay. I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande. And I learned to ride before I learned to stand. I'm a riding fool who's up to date. I know every trail in this Lone Star State, 'cause I ride the range in my Ford V8. Yippee-i-oh-ki-yay, yippee-i-oh-ki-yay, yippee-i-oh-ki-yay.
All right, we're going to have a special treat here. We're going to have some dancing, and we're going to bring the mic over here. And this is the Green Mountain Cloggers. Let's give them a hand. Well, we are in for a treat. And Pam, you want to tell us a little bit about the group?
So the Green Mountain Cloggers was started in, too close? 1985 by a woman from Starksboro. Yes, Cecilia Bissell. Anyway, so are you an original member, Ann? No, none of us are. So I'm Pam. You want to come on? Ann. You see, she's not shy. Heather. And Kim. And we've been dancing together off and off for a dozen years or so. Thank you.
We're going to be back in a little while. And now we are going to bring up, where is it? I think we're bringing up Brian Yarwood. Now, Brian has been helping me with the Barn Dance Show and lives right here in Heinsberg. And, he tells stories. Brian tells stories a lot of the time. Anybody who's been, how many people have heard Brian's story? Yes, we've heard it. But this story is something really special. And we thought that it would be a great time for Brian to make his debut on the world internet.
There are people out there, I'm sure, who need a nap, and that's what my stories do best. So sit yourself in a comfortable seat. You'll be just fine.
So I want you to give a big round of applause to Brian Yarwood.
It should be noted that Rick usually hands the steamboat whistle to me, but I've got such a bad cold that thing would be infecting millions by the time the day is over. So here we are in November. The holiday season has started, and I really do love the holidays. They just make me feel all warm and comfortable. And I think about family, and we always spend our holidays with our friends here in Vermont. My family is back in Iowa. And all of our friends' families seem to be elsewhere, so we have what we call orphan parties, where we all get together and share the holidays. It's the family that we chose. But I stop and I think about how lucky I am, to have these friends, and how lucky I've been to have the family that I was raised in, and how marvelous all of those people were. I mean, I always say it was great having a brother who was 18 months older than me because I developed an overhand right cross that could drop a rhino. Not everybody gets that, but I did. There was one family member that I often thought I didn't hear much about. That was my dad's dad, my grandfather. And it wasn't because he wasn't around. He certainly was. He died rather young. I've outlived him by several years. But the stories that I heard were not the stories of benefit and luck that one might normally think of. And this story came to mind a few weeks ago when Rick and I were driving to a party, which we seem to be doing with incredible regularity. And I looked at Rick and said, I know exactly where my grandfather was 100 years ago today. And he said, well, how do you know that? And I said, funny, there's a story there. I knew that he'd been in World War I, but I didn't know anything else about it. There didn't seem to be any stories that came down. There was one rather unreliable narrator who was one of the town heavy drinkers who, filled my ear full of stories, but you don't know how many of those are true. But a year and a half ago, my uncle tugged me aside and said, I got a story for you. You see, my grandfather was in the infantry. He was a corporal, if I'm not mistaken. Nothing highfalutin. That was saved for those who were better heeled than anybody in my family was ever going to be. And his division got to Europe pretty early on. Now, the American army in Europe in World War I insisted on fighting as a unit. They weren't going to be spread out amongst the British and the French. They were going to be an American army, and they were going to fight as an American army, which meant they were doomed to repeat all of the mistakes that the British and the French had already made in the first 3 years of the war. And they were in a particular sector where the ground was incredibly flat. So if there was a hill at all, it was worth fighting for. And their division was in front of this particular hill. So by God, they were going to take it. And day after day, my grandfather would see regiment after regiment go up this hill. Now, the Germans had 3 years to sit on this hill. And Germans being Germans, they're very industrious. And they did what you were supposed to do. There was no way to approach that hill. It was said that an ant couldn't have crawled up that hill without getting shot. Every possible approach was covered. Every angle. If you managed to break in here, they could get you from every different side. There was no way that this was going to turn out well. And there was no way that they'd be talked out of doing it. So day after day, 1,000 men would go up and 200 would come back. If it was a good day, maybe 1,000 would go up and 300 would come back. And it was just a matter of time before it was going to be my grandfather's turn. And finally, the next day was my grandfather's turn. And these things went off like clockwork. They were all timed with incredible clockwork regularity. At 4 o'clock, a bombardment would ensue. And the Germans knew, it's 4 o'clock. Oh, they're going to start shooting soon. And they'd take their machine guns out down, and they'd go into their bomb-proof shelters, and they'd sit there and drink their coffee and wait. Because they knew at 6 o'clock, the bombardment would stop. And that's when they would go out, and they'd set their machine guns back up, and they'd wait. And like clockwork, at 6:30, that's when the assault would come. Everybody had a time schedule and everybody followed it. And that's what they were expecting. Well, 4 o'clock comes along and there's no bombardment. And they're checking their watches thinking, this doesn't seem right. Maybe they're just gonna, I don't know, what's going on? Well, 4:30 comes and there's still nothing. And 5 o'clock rolls around and the sun's kind of starting to creep up. And 6 o'clock hits. And their colonel at this point is saying, you know what, if they're going to kill us, let's kill us. Let's just go. Forget the bombardment. Let's get this over with and let's just go. But word kind of filtered down that maybe he should wait. But the attack wasn't called off. They were waiting. They were on their firing steps, ready to go up over the trenches into, the ensuing hell that awaited them. And finally, at 11 o'clock, they started to hear bells. You didn't hear bells during that war. I don't know if you ever hear them in any war. I've happily had the pleasure of never having been in one. But there was a sound that they were unaccustomed to, and they were coming from the surrounding French villages. And it was 11 o'clock on the 11th day of the 11th month, which meant the war was over. And that's when I stopped to think, you know what? He really was lucky.
You could see how that story and the idea of storytelling is such an important part of what we do here in Vermont. A lot of us sit around and tell stories and keep families alive. And Brian, you've been helpful to this thing because you like to thank our sponsors. Do you remember who they are?
Oh, I do. I do indeed. We of course have the Ear Trumpet Microphone Company. And where are they out of, Rick?
They are out of
Oregon.
Yes.
And then, of course, this fellow. Now, Rick actually tried out steam whistles from several different makers. Because this is actually fashioned on the very same steam whistle that was used on the original Grand Ole Opry.
That's right.
And who knew that was, but he went through several of them before settling on this, and this is made by?
Well, this was made by Randy Wood out in Georgia, and with the help of Jen Larson over at the Grand Ole Opry Archives is one of the reasons that I was able to get this recreation of the great Judge D. Hay, who ran the Grand Ole Opry, and we thought it would be really fun to have it in the show because of the mighty Ticonderoga down the road.
There's a connection to steam here, actually, yes. And Goodrich Inc., our friend Dave Goodrich, who's not here today, he's off at a family gathering. Funny thing how that works. And he did a lot of the artwork. And we should also probably mention our friend Donnie of Donnie's Doors down at the Pride of Moncton.
That's right.
Who's been instrumental in getting us all started.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Donnie was the one who kind of really spearheaded things and showed us how having a backdrop was important. And he has a beautiful backdrop that he lent us for a while. And then we were able, with Jeff Miller, our sound man and stage technician over here, we were able to create our own so that Donnie could use his when he needed it. So I'm going to bring out our next guest, Brian.
All right.
And, when we have the barn dance, we really want to focus on some of the really wonderful musicians that make living in Vermont special. And a lot of them you will see in other parts of the world because they travel a lot. And this duo, of Dana and Sue Robinson right here, you're going to come over here. And you're going to give us a couple of tunes, and then we're going to talk a little bit about your upcoming project, but we're really excited to have you here on the Great Vermont Barn Dance Show.
Thank you. We're excited to be here. Rick, we love this.
see you with another, and to know you'll never be mine. Greenback dollar. I don't want your watch and chain. All I want is your love, darling. Say you take me back again. I was born in East Virginia, North Carolina. Did I go?
So we're going to sing
Yeah,
a really, really old song.
a couple old songs to start out with here.
Yeah, that one was pretty old.
That's kind of an English ballad come Southern Appalachian, but now we're going to, I guess, Scotland come.
Old Scotland, old England. This one's hundreds of years old, and it's lasted because it has a motif that seems to linger through the years.
Keeps popping up.
This is a story about a young woman, a beautiful young woman who comes to town, and she is so well loved and adored, and then she makes off with some other woman's husband, and she is no longer so well loved. So this is called Katie Cruel. When first I came to town, they called me the roving jewel. Now they've changed their tune, call me Katie Cruel. Through the woods I go, through the bog and mire, straight way down the road till I come to my heart's desire. Oh, the diddle-o-day, oh, the diddle-o-die-o-day. If I was where I would be, then I'd be where I am. But here I am where I must be. Where I would be, I cannot. Oh, the diddle-o-day, oh, the diddle-o-die-o-day. When first I came to town, they bought me drinks aplenty. Now they've changed their tune, hand me the bottles empty. I know who I love, I know who does love me, and I know where I'm going, and I know who's going with me. Oh, the diddle-o-day, oh, the diddle-o-die-o-day. to town. They called me the Roving Joe. Now they've changed their tune. They call me Katie Crow. Oh, the diddle-o-day. Oh, the diddle-o-die-o-day. Oh, the diddle-o-day. Oh, the diddle-o-die-o-day.
So these past few months since the spring, I've endeavored to write a cycle of songs about Vermont life and Vermont characters and the landscape, and it's been a real fun process. And I've come up with almost a dozen songs, and and I realize the more I get into this that I've really only scratched the surface. I've tended to look for subject material just around our little town of Cabot, and Cabot is a great town. It's got so much going on, but it's really just a small corner of Vermont. But I want to play you a song that I wrote about a farmer. He's a very typical farmer in many ways, lives up the hill from where we are, and he does all the normal farmerly things, but with one little addition. He's a pilot. He used to be a commercial pilot before he settled down onto the farm. And though he gave up flying the big planes, he's still got his little Cessna up in a little hangar up on the hill. So people call him the flying farmer. So I think in a way it's kind of typical of a lot of Vermonters in their lives. They have different vocations, and you might be surprised at what different people do. So this is called the flying farmer. 1, 2. About Charm Hill is a farmer that I know. With a big grin at the ready, he's always on the go. Underneath Orion, beneath the coat of stars, there's a pilot on his ATV flying across the farm. High upon the hillside, there's a grassy airstrip where the Cessna's in the hangar, waiting to take the air. Says my feet are planted on the ground, my heart is high above the clouds. We're so deep you could pull me out. Yeah, this blue is all around. Says I sugar in the springtime, I press cider in the fall. Summers I'm on the hillside with the brush hog. Winter times for the shop work, hitch up the snowplow, spend time with friends and family, we make it happen somehow. Since my feet are planted on the ground, my heart is high above the clouds. We're so deep you could pull me out. Yeah, this blue is all around. get up in the sky, set my bearings by the camel's hump. That's where I'm gonna fly. Since my feet are planted on the ground, my heart is high above the clouds. It's so deep it could pull me out. Yellow spoons all around.
It's so great to have you here on the Vermont Barn Dance Show. And you know, these folks travel all over the world. They have a busy calendar, and for a while they moved away from here, and they've come back. And come back with a vengeance.
Vengeance.
Because
we love Vermont.
you're doing some really wonderful things over in Cabot. What are the kind of things that you're doing over there?
Well, Cabot in the first place has quite a few great musicians already. You know, there's Katie Trouts and Lee Blackwell and Rick Barron. Rick Barron. You know Rick Barron.
Oh yeah.
Artie Eno, and there's just like you never know what's hiding under the rocks in your own community. You know, they just come out, and it's very inspiring to know that there's so many great musicians. And there's a wonderful hall, kind of like the Heinsberg Town Hall, that makes for great concerts. And when Sue and I found our house, which is an 1880s schoolhouse, we walked into the big room downstairs, and the first thing we thought was house concerts. So we've been having house concerts there, and we're putting on shows in the Willie Building, and then there's
Willie Building is the town hall.
The Willie Building is the town hall, and then there's a new hardware store, a funky old hardware store, got turned into a hardware store / pub. And they have music in there Saturday nights and Sunday afternoons, and then any other odd time that comes up that's appropriate for music. And then there's the Congregational Church, and this little tiny town has so many music venues. So
And you're involved with Sugar on Spice?
Spice on Snow.
Oh, excuse me, Sugar on Spice. I'm thinking of syrup time.
Yeah, well, Spice on Snow is an annual winter music festival that's been going on for 9 years this coming January. It's always the last weekend of January. It occurs in Montpelier from Thursday through Sunday afternoon. So it's like 50 different artists and 60 events and workshops and jam sessions and concerts, and it's very exciting.
You know, we'd like to thank all you folks out there who are watching the Great Vermont Barn Dance right here in beautiful Heinsberg, Vermont. And this is Dana and Sue Robinson, who are our featured guests for this show. And one of the things that they are doing that's really important, and I you know, because you travel all over the world, and because we're looking at a worldwide audience out here, you have a Kickstarter project that you want to talk about.
Yes, I do. In fact, it's an Indiegogo.
Okay.
And Indiegogo and Kickstarter are very similar, but that's, if you went to look for us on Kickstarter, you wouldn't find us.
Right.
But actually, the quickest way to find out about all this stuff is just to go to robinsongs.com or just Google Dana and Susan Robinson, or look for us on Facebook. It's all there. But yes, this cycle of songs about Vermont life and Vermont characters and landscape. I wrote a grant this spring to the Vermont Arts Council, and happily I was awarded the grant, and that funds about half of the project. So we're reaching out to all of you out there, and all of you in this room, to just perhaps do something as small as purchase your CD in advance. Very easy, and it helps support this album. And I think there's maybe 2 more weeks of it running.
2 more weeks. And folks, you know, if you've never been involved with these kind of crowdfunding things, they really work.
Yes.
They do work.
And we are so appreciative to everyone who supports us in these projects.
It's
And I'll just mention that last song that we sang is one of the songs that will be on the album.
Yeah. It's like you have skin in the game too, and you get to help us out, and then we share the benefit.
So what we'd like to do is you're gonna be coming back in a little bit near the end of the show to join us in some more fun. But right now we're gonna ask Sue to get that banjo out.
G? All
In
right.
G. And we're you know back in the old days, how many people here watched Hee Haw?
How many will admit to watching?
That's right. And one of the fun things when I was a young kid was that they would have these banjo jams. And we have a few banjo players right here. Claire, you want to come up here, and Brian? All right. And we're going to try and make sure we're in tune.
Oh, well, they're banjos.
As in tune as banjos can be. And you know, when you think of Vermont, you might not think about banjos, but boy, there are a lot of banjos in Vermont.
Can't shake a tree without having
That's right. We just love the old 5-string banjo and uke banjos, all kinds of banjos here. And we're going to try and do this not too fast for people at home. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. So we're going to bring you back, I think.
Oh, really? Right now? Lovely. Splendid. How do you do so? Just leave the banjo on. We have to get Leadfoot Louise back up here first, and then I think we're doing dancing, Rick. So we got lots of things to do. We have many things to do, so I don't get to bore you quite so quickly. Are you guys up and ready to go? More or less? So we have the benefit of having played together for so long over the years that we've known. I've known Beck and Claire and Dan for about as long as I've known most people in my family, really. So it's really fun to actually see them like put it all together because it sounds wonderful. Here they are, folks.
Well, this one is an original tune that I wrote with help from Donna Thunder and a little help from Chris Martin, a little help from Barry, and a little help from Claire. And it's a moonshining tune.
It's called Mason Jar.
Everybody here likes moonshine, right?
I don't know, they're up kind of early to be moonshine likers.
Way down yonder in the shady room, I'm gonna cook and break my will.
Let's give him another round of applause. We'll be back shortly. And we're going to have Brian come out and tell us another story. Let's give Brian Yarwood a big hand.
Well, it's kind of nice to be able to do this for people who haven't heard all my stories. I think most of my friends begin drooling every time I start telling, like, okay, here he goes again. But I have the odd habit of getting up very early in the morning and going to a local package handling facility where I will work my tail end off for several hours before then going to school and working there all day. Now, during school vacations, I don't go to school, obviously. I just work and then I'm done. And the holiday season, which we're entering now, is that point at which things get really crazy. And it's not really crazy just because I'm there shunting other people's boxes all over. It's because everybody is just going bonkers. And that's simply the way it is. Well, it was New Year's Eve a couple of years ago. Christmas Eve a couple of years ago. And just happenstance, I threw on my red flannel shirt, pulled up my jeans, headed out the door, not even sure. It was 2 in the morning. I had no idea what I had on. The fact that I had succeeded in putting clothing on, I thought was pretty good. Worked my shift, and I realized that I really needed more chocolate if this was going to be a festive holiday. And the basic theory being that you just can't have too much chocolate. At least that's the theory I operate under. And I was driving through Williston, and I thought, big box store, big box chocolate, there must be something there, so I swerved into the Walmart parking lot. Got out of my car and walked in, and there, coming around one of the aisles, was a young mother who had an infant in the cart, and what can only be described as a precocious, maybe 6-year-old, bouncing along beside her, ripping her a new one with each and every step. She was not giving Mom any kind of grace, nothing at all. This child would be insufferable under the best of conditions, and this was not the best of conditions. This was 8:30 on Christmas Eve morning. This kid wanted to be somewhere other than where she was, and she was ticked off at Mom. Mom looked like she was kind of sweating because the child was all really kind of getting out of control, and the kid in the cart was starting to fuss. And I intended to just simply walk by this odd little dumpster fire and move along with my holiday hunt. When the 6-year-old called my very existence into question. She pointed her finger right up in my face and announced in no uncertain terms, "You're not real!" I don't know if you've ever had your existence called into question quite like that. I mean, it takes you right back to, I don't know. It's a very existential sort of thing. Are you real? I have no idea. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I've never really thought of it before. But now that I think of it, there's a good chance that I might not be real. And what if I'm not? What in fact am I? And then I realized she thought I was Santa Claus. And Mom began to apologize. Something about kids on the bus, the older kids, telling her that Santa didn't really exist in me. I'm not going to say one way or the other. I have no idea. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I know that I happen not to be Santa. But I waved off Mom, and I just kind of leaned over to the child's level and said, "No, I assure you, I'm very real." And with that, I straightened up and walked away, leaving a rather flabbergasted child standing there kind of shocked and stunned. And on my way out, incidentally, they had no chocolate. It looked like somebody had gone through the chocolate aisle with a shop vac and sucked up every last morsel of chocolate. It was all gone, nothing. So having my existence called into question and no chocolate, it wasn't turning into a very good morning. But on my way out, I looked down an aisle and Mom was facing me. And the now suddenly very helpful, cheerful child is facing the other direction. And Mom just looked at me and went, and I realized that was probably the best Christmas gift I could have given anyone.
Well, just so that you know, that Dana and Sue Robinson have this wonderful album on vinyl, The Angels Share, and they have lots of other products right here, CDs. And as we talked about earlier, they have an Indiegogo campaign on, and they are looking for your support in their ability to make a brand new album. So please, if you're thinking about supporting the arts, you know, that's an important thing to do these days, is keep all of us artists working. So think about that as a nice holiday present. Buy a special pre-order CD for Dana and Sue Robinson. All right? Let's give them a big hand.
Do what he says. We're going to sing another song that's going to be on that upcoming album.
So this is called The Town That Music Saved. I was coming into town on the Danville Road. I saw a dozen little turkeys and a big old hen, strutting neath the glory and taking their time. When you come into the village, well, you gotta slow down, driving past the towers of the creamery. Gotta have respect for that hollow ground. I work 3 jobs like most of you. Anything to pay the bills when they come due. But more than anything, I like to play some tunes. You can tell by the board at the village store, there's more going on any sane person could ever do. Everybody's got a gig to go to. We're going out to Harry's, it's a Saturday night, and the limes are tuning up in the Willie Hall. Gonna raise some money for a trip this fall. There's an old time session at the Den on Sundays, and Dunham's back line will be out on Walton Road. We're gonna get together and have a good time. You can tell by the bar at the village store, there's more going on than any sane person could ever do. Everybody's got a gig to go to. It's just a little town that loves a song. Could it be the town that the music saved? That blackbird yonder sings every day. You can tell by the board at the village store, there's more going on than any sane person could ever do. Every everybody's got a gig to go to. I was coming into town on the Danville Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're going to try to rock another very old song. Now, there's a lot of different interpretations of what this song means, and I think that's part of the charm of these ancient songs. Some people say it's about the death of Robin Hood and his funeral, but if you listen to it a little bit closely, I like to think it's about being complicit in your own community. For example, it carries the same weight if you do not vote as if you do vote. So there's things like that, you know. So this is called Who Killed Cock Robin? And everyone at home and everybody here in this room, you can sing the Who's if you like. You can sing the It Was I's as well. So.
Or if you know the song, just sing the words. That's pretty good.
So close.
we're ready to bring out the dancers. Let's give them a big hand. The Green Mountain Cloggers! Well, it's time to bring everybody up. Everybody. This is our fourth Great Vermont Barn Dance Show. And we'd like to thank everyone for their hard work, especially my poor wife over here, Mariana, who's struggling. Because some of our live feed equipment is kind of giving her some problems right now. But it's great that you folks here are supporting us in the hall. And I'd like to give another hand to Dana and Sue Robinson. We have Leadfoot Louise over here. Brian Yarwood. And in a minute, they'll be back to Green Mountain Cloggers. I was standing by my window